Hello and welcome to our webcast. I'm Danielle Johns with Moss Adams, and I'm going to get us started for today's session, How to Curate Strategic Higher Education Program Portfolios. We're pleased that you've joined us today, and before we begin, I'm going to play our housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining. We're pleased to present our continuing professional education webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session offers 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy requirements. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of polling questions. To participate in the polls, please check the button next to your answer within the slide window and click Submit. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry if you can't download your CPE certificate today. We'll email you a copy in 2 weeks. If attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet, available in our Slide Deck and Handouts widget to receive credit. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. CPE credit can only be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
We have a couple of great speakers with us today from Moss Adams who will be introducing themselves momentarily. Their bios and contact information are located in your webcast console for your convenience. And now I'd like to turn the floor over to Scott.
Good morning, and glad to have all of you with us today. I am Scott Simpson, a partner that focuses on consulting and auditing institutions of higher education. I've done this for the last 25 years, and in those years I've worked with literally over 100 institutions, ranging from public institutions, private institutions, and for-profit institutions. So I've seen quite a lot in those years and hope to share some stories to go along with this webcast that we are presenting today. Tammy?
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Tammy Lohr. I'm a senior manager in our business consulting services group. And like Scott, I really focus on working with mission-driven organizations, such as higher education institutions, on improving their efficiency, effectiveness, and long-term sustainability. And we're so excited that you have all joined us today to learn more about how to evaluate and improve your academic program portfolios.
Thanks, Tammy. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about why strategic portfolio management, the attributes of a strong portfolio, how to evaluate your current portfolio, and then what to do with those results. And so throughout, again, we'll have a number of examples that we talk through, and we do encourage you to throw any questions that you have in the Q&A inbox. We'll do our best to try and answer them, but I think we have a pretty full agenda. So if we don't get to any of your specific questions, we'll follow up with an email back to you. And with that, our first polling question, Danielle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Our first polling question of the day. I would characterize my institution's academic program portfolio as A, cutting edge, B, mostly geared towards the future, C, an even split between innovative and traditional programs, D, mostly traditional programs. The polling questions are located right on the slides we are presenting. If you can't see it, hit the F5 key to refresh your console. To respond, please click the button next to the answer you choose and hit submit. I'll leave this up just for a few more seconds to get a few more responses. And the results.
All right. This is about what I expected. It looks like we've got, gosh, almost 80% with traditional programs and then some split with innovative. In higher ed, as we all know, it's difficult to implement change and to be on the cutting edge. I really commend those institutions that are in that bucket, and then those that are mostly geared toward the future. Those of you that are evenly split and then the mostly traditional, hopefully you'll take something away from this presentation and really look at, is there a way to more strategically implement some new programs. Strategic portfolio management. What we're talking about here is your program offerings, and the objectives really to identify those programs that support the mission, align with student and labor market demands, and are positioned for increased enrollment over the next 10 years. When you think about strategic portfolio management, you really want to take a holistic view of the portfolio, the initiatives, the programs, the services, and prioritize those based on alignment with strategic objectives, any kind of return on investment, and then also risk. This includes both program gap analysis, which we'll talk about later on, and an assessment of existing programs using a common set of metrics. Really, you should seek new offerings that would increase enrollment and meet local and national labor market needs. And that's really key here. So one of the things I did want to talk about on this slide, you know, when you really are looking at strategic portfolio management, what you are offering, you really should think about what is working for your institution, what isn't working for your institution. On a couple of these bullet points, what programs are considered core to your mission. So you have a number of, I'll call them religious institutions that have certain programs that are core to their mission, and they definitely do not want to cut. That's okay in your portfolio management. But then you also want to look at what are the programs that you can offer that really attract students, and then maybe take a look at programs that aren't necessarily sustainable over the next 10 years, and then evaluate those opportunities to consolidate or reallocate resources. And we will talk in a little bit here about, at the end of the presentation, consolidation and reallocation of those resources. Years ago, I worked with one institution that really prided itself on its ability to get a new program up and running within a 12 to 18 month time frame. And then they prided themselves on the ability to cut a program within 12 months. Now that institution, the leadership and the board were hyper-focused on the local and regional labor market and being the institution that educated students for that labor market. That was really their focus as an institution, was providing graduated students to meet the needs of the local and regional labor market. Every institution has its own mission, has its own strategy, but you really need to understand your portfolio and impacts that mission and strategy, as well as keeping an eye toward the future and how to keep attracting students and then offering programs that get students in the door. So why strategic portfolio management? So we'll break this down into proactive versus reactive. The proactive schools, they look at support data-driven decision-making. So really getting the data on those programs. How are they functioning? What's the enrollment like? What's the student outcomes? They define success factors for shaping program offerings and continued market relevance. So this is looking at the labor market. Not sure how many of you go out there as an institution and look at U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and maybe what are the hot or top 10, top 20 fastest growing occupations, and how does your institution align with some of those? And when you do have a proactive approach, that tends to lead to operational sustainability. And then you are also meeting community and labor market needs. Reactive institutions typically have enrollment decreases, so they're trying to figure out what to do to change that trajectory. Enrollment decreases lead to net tuition decreases, budget cuts, and then no longer viable to reduce administrative costs. What that means is you only can cut the administrative side so much at the cost of the institution. So that's really the two kind of buckets. And you really want to work toward being in that proactive bucket. For those of you out there that look at your institution and say, gosh, we're a little more reactive, there are things you can do to change that, to be more on the proactive side. So let's talk about what are the attributes of a strong portfolio. So strategic portfolio alignment, this is a healthy mix of programs that attract students, educate at a high level, and meet societal needs. Market competitiveness, what are your other local institutions offering? And so this one is really, I think, important, and a couple things that I've seen over the years. One, I worked with a public university system that had duplicate majors across all of the universities in that system. And you really step back, and me as kind of the independent consultant and auditor step back and said, do they really need a music major or a music program at all 6 institutions? Do they all need business majors? And you start looking at the duplication, and it really didn't allow those institutions to be strategic and be kind of known for something a little bit different. They were just kind of all the same flavor, and they were all competing for the same students. So that's really one look at market competitiveness. The other is what are the other institutions in your radius, I'll say, what are they offering? And so again, another example. In one geographic area I worked with a number of years ago, there were 5 universities, college universities, all within about a 45-mile radius. Only 2 of them had nursing and I'll say health science related majors. And those programs were booked solid at those 2. Just, booked to the max. The other 3 institutions in that area were really struggling to attract students, to keep enrollment up. I think if there would have even been a small enrollment increase, they would have been thrilled. And so that was an opportunity for those institutions to really look at the market competitiveness of other programs in the area. And one of those 3 embarked on really a quest to take advantage of the health science, I'll call it, marketplace that they were seeing this huge boom on. And they made some investments. in that area started offering some programs. And today, that is their largest area of enrollment for that one institution. So they looked at market competitiveness and said, what are we missing out on that we really can add to our institution? They developed a plan, they took advantage, and now it is their largest area of enrollment, and they're doing phenomenal with it. Student outcomes tied to needs. This is really looking at, your labor market, the local, regional, and national. Are the student outcomes tying to the needs of that labor market and society? And then finally, financial sustainability. We all know that programs that are struggling to keep up enrollment, they aren't necessarily financially sustainable. That may be a program that is tied to your mission, and that's okay. And what I like to say is, as long as you understand that what that situation is, that's okay to make those decisions. But if you don't understand what the numbers are telling you, that's when you can really get in trouble. We also know that programs that are absolutely booked solid are maxed out as far as number of students that can be enrolled in those programs. Those programs generally are making money for institutions and helping the overall financial performance of the institution. So again, when we look at attributes of a strong portfolio, it's all of these items: alignment, competitiveness, student outcomes, and for financial sustainability. And I think we are on to our next polling question.
Great. Here we are at poll question number 2. How would you characterize your institution's portfolio management cadence? A, regular and frequent. B, regular and infrequent. C, evaluate programs on a rolling basis. C, haven't evaluated anything in a few years. E, unsure. You do have the option to submit questions for the presenters in the Q&A window. We have quite a bit of content to cover today, so if we don't have time to respond during the webcast, we will do our best to follow up with you afterwards. And we'll give everybody just a few more seconds here for last responses. And the results.
Okay, great. It looks like we've got a wide range of folks on today. So we've got about 40% who are unsure, and then a smattering around regular, frequent, infrequent, and on a rolling basis. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what this process actually looks like now. So as Scott has already talked about, evaluating your institution's academic program portfolio is a really critical process to help ensure that you're offering programs that align with your mission, that they meet the needs of students of society, and that they are financially sustainable. A portfolio review evaluates the entire breadth of academic offerings and really does differ from a program review, which most institutions really do already have in place. Those program reviews are usually done in isolation, and they happen on a staggered schedule, so they're not necessarily giving you access to real-time information across your entire institution. So here on the slide, you'll see the overarching steps that generally take place for a portfolio analysis. And we'll break each of these down in today's presentation, but we wanted to just start out by sharing the entire process. So you'll, of course, start with your strategic plan. That will really help guide a lot of the discussions, the metrics, and the goals for your institution's academic offerings. Using your strategic plan, your mission, and your vision as a framework, you'll then start defining evaluation metrics that will be used for this evaluation. You'll then move into actually evaluating all of your existing program offerings. So you'll use those evaluation metrics that were developed and then start to apply those to each individual program so that you get a good sense of what your overall portfolio looks like. With your results all put together and compiled, you can then start to identify potential program gaps and see what your optimal program portfolio would look like. So again, rooting what is optimal within your strategic plan and your institution's mission. Based on these results, you can start to implement changes like expansions, new programs, consolidation of programs, or even discontinuing programs. These evaluations should also be continuously monitored over time since market trends, demographics, and student interests are constantly evolving. Overall, this entire process should be driven by data. It should be aligned with your institutional goals and focused on delivering really high quality education while maintaining fiscal responsibility. At the very top of this timeline, you'll see that we include a steering committee to help guide each and every step. And this is really important given the shared governance model that exists in higher education and just best practice around having a collaborative process for this type of institution-wide evaluation. So we're going to start out by talking a little bit more about that steering committee. So a steering committee plays a really important role in overseeing and guiding the entire review process. Typically, the committee includes faculty members, administrators, and key stakeholders, including potentially an external consultant that can really help move this work forward and conduct a lot of the analysis on your behalf. The very first job of the committee is to create a charter that clearly defines why the institution is performing a portfolio review at this particular point in time, really defining what are the goals for the review and how they'll be communicating to the broader institutional community, as well as the timeline to be able to complete this work. So making sure that those goals, objectives, timelines, communication cadences are really clear at the outset of this process. Throughout the review process, the steering committee is involved in designing the review methods, monitoring timelines, making sure that the review is completed systematically and fairly across each and every program. They'll also take a role in communicating progress, decisions, and recommendations out to stakeholders. They help develop those evaluation metrics to be used in the analysis. They evaluate the results for each program, and they develop recommendations around the strengths and weaknesses of academic programs based on their results. So the steering committee helps inform the evaluation metrics that are established. They might help oversee that data collection and analysis process, and then they're making recommendations about program enhancements, modifications, consolidations, or discontinuations. Obviously, the decisions and recommendations made from the committee have a very significant impact on the institution's academic offerings, certainly on personnel and on students, and these also do often have accreditation implications that the committee should also make sure that they're taking into consideration. So, as you can see from this description, the steering committee has a lot of responsibility for really overseeing the entire academic portfolio review process, with the goal to really ensure that the institution's academic programs are aligned with its mission, strategic goals, quality standards, and market needs. So after you have your steering committee all put together, we're going to get into the process. So as you go through the review process, we really want to be thinking about linking back to your strategic plan along the way. So on this slide, we say start with your strategic plan, but also reference your strategic plan as a framework throughout the entire process. And this is really critical to making sure that the review process will incorporate your institution's mission, goals, and long-term objectives. So you'll want to make sure that everyone on your steering committee is really intimately familiar with your plan, your goals, priorities, vision, and mission. And as you're taking a look at your strategic plan, also consider the external factors like market demand, program competition, and student forecasts to see if your goals can be reasonably achieved. data sources that are commonly used to help inform this type of trend analysis. Scott had already mentioned the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's a few other sources of data that are pretty common for this. So the National Student Clearinghouse, IPEDS, the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, and the National Survey of Student Engagement. So these sources can all be really helpful in evaluating the relevance and anticipated student participation for different academic programs, which then sort of informs the feasibility of your strategic plan goals. The next step in the process is to define your evaluation metrics. And again, these should be rooted in your strategic plan. So here you'll want to use your strategic plan as the framework for understanding how each academic program in the current portfolio contributes to the achievement of your goals. So that includes understanding how programs support student outcomes, research excellence, program reputation, community engagement, diversity and inclusion, or other key objectives or values that your institution has already defined. So here we have listed some potential metrics that institutions can use to help evaluate their individual programs. So for student outcomes, we often find that institutions look at things like student retention and graduation rates, as well as placement into career or further educational programs. We've also included some program efficiency metrics here to help provide that operational and sustainability lens. So looking at factors like the number of students in each program, the ratio of students to faculty, and overall course fill rates. The last example on this slide shows the impact on the institution's mission. And this is where you're able to quantify or really show the link between an individual academic program and your institution's overall mission. So thinking about how to quantify things like the program's reputation, the link to other goals and objectives. How do you honor faculty credentials as well as researcher scholarly contributions? These are factors that are sometimes pretty hard to quantify, and they can be overlooked in an evaluation framework because they don't necessarily fit into a neat little performance metric, but they are intangible factors that really can serve as a differentiator between different academic programs for prospective students. So making sure that those are incorporated is really important to making sure that this is a holistic evaluation. And here we have some additional potential evaluation metrics. These are more focused on operational and external factors. So as Scott has already talked about, you'll want to consider market demand for the program. You can also look at student enrollment trends, the labor market outlook, job placement, and yield rate to get a better sense of the demand for this program in today's market. We've also included some revenue and operating cost metrics here to take into consideration given that financial sustainability lens. The last thing that I wanted to note when it comes to defining these evaluation metrics is that, when your steering committee is going through the process of defining these, you'll want to make sure that you have a really good balance among various factors to, again, help you get that really holistic perspective on each program. So for example, you could be operating, I'll use the example that Scott was talking about, a music program. Maybe this music program that you have has a great reputation. Maybe it has some high profile alumni that might also be donors, but it has a few students and a lot of operating costs. So what you don't want to do in this portfolio analysis is overemphasize just market outlook or just operating costs. You want to make sure that the metrics that you're selecting for your review process really demonstrate balance among the different priorities and values that are at your institution. So making sure that you've got good representation from across a number of these different factors to be able to preserve the programs that really do have that reputational impact for your organization. All right, so you've gone through the hard process of defining your metrics. Now it's time to actually apply those metrics to each academic program. So here you're going to collect data for each program to be able to look at the metrics that you've selected. a lot of times academic programs already have some or most of this data for their own purposes. So we'll often see steering committees allow the programs to do a little bit of a self-assessment as the starting point. So you'd send over those metrics, the details of the data that you want. That's really important because you want to make sure that you're getting consistent data across all of those different programs. But then you'd really give the program the opportunity to complete the metrics and provide an explanation of them as well. We also see institutions more and more often looking for similar data among peer or competitor programs, really to understand how they stack up relative to other academic offerings that are out in that marketplace. This isn't a step that's totally necessary within this evaluation, but a lot of institutions really like to have that benchmark to compare their own programs against. For each of your evaluation components, you'll then want to move into that external review process. So you do want someone who is external to that program to review and validate the data that is presented. This work could be done by, the provost, steering committee members, or again, a lot of institutions do rely on an external consultant to be able to help perform this analysis because it can be quite time consuming. This external review also provides some independence over the results and helps ensure that they're an accurate representation of that program's performance. Once you have all the data for each program, you can then start to evaluate how the program aligns with the institution's strategic plan. So, to what is the program contributing to your institution's goals, and what could be changed to improve performance and the program's strategic importance to the institution. And this is where you have a chance to identify the strengths and the weaknesses of each academic program, both in relation to one another within your portfolio, as well as relative to other competing programs that are out in the marketplace. So the next step is looking at the institution's holistic academic programs to see if you have potential program gaps. So really looking at your evaluation results and your market data and starting to see how your portfolio aligns with student demand, labor demand, and mission fit. So when you're thinking about student demand, you'll want to be thinking about things like enrollment trends and what information you can glean from current and prospective student surveys. So, what does the pool of prospective students look like? What are academic outcomes for those students? How many other programs are also available to those students? And then how do they stack up in terms of outcomes? Because if we have a top-notch program, we've got some solid recruitment, we might be okay with that program, even if national trends are showing that fewer and fewer students are interested in that degree offering. So really getting this understanding of what are students interested in and being able to use that to identify where you might have some potential program gaps. You'll also want to look at labor demand. So you want to see what programs have really strong employment outlooks, what are labor market trends, can we see what our graduate outcomes are, what are employers saying, either in our local market or at a more national level, that they need in terms of qualified staff. So where are there potential opportunities for us to build a program based on the next iteration of career options for our students, and really helping to make sure that we're preparing our students for a fruitful career in today's world. So maybe we could anticipate, for example, a lot of focus in renewable energy. Do we have programs that could help support the development of qualified staff and also meet student demands for that type of potential future work? And the last piece of looking for and evaluating potential program gaps is to also consider mission fit. So are there new or emerging programs that really speak to your institution's mission? Or are there emerging degree opportunities or starting a new program to address a burgeoning career doesn't necessarily fit within our mission? So again, this is another area where you want to be seeking balance across these three different elements. And really, a portfolio review is the perfect time to take these factors into consideration. So in the example that I just gave on, renewable energy focus, maybe we're a liberal arts college and we don't have an engineering program. So maybe that might be something that exists out in the world where there's student demand and there's labor demand, but it doesn't necessarily fit with our mission or our general offerings. And so that might be a situation where you say, okay, we recognize that, but that doesn't work for our individual institution. Scott, do you have anything to add on this or stories from your clients?
Yeah, so just a couple things to share and some examples that I've seen over the years with institutions really filling the gaps here that you describe. And it's been really quite cool to see these institutions do something like this. And I don't know if they went through a similar process like we've talked about, but the outcomes have been phenomenal. So in one situation, I worked with a community college that was right in the middle of what was an emerging, I'll call it wine country. Lots of vineyards starting to go up over the years. And they took a look at that and said, maybe we should start a vintner type program. And they engaged the community, they engaged the college, the board. They decided to do that, and it's just going like wildfire. The enrollments are peaked out. They're doing phenomenal. And they took advantage of an industry that was growing in their specific geographic region and really embraced it and said there's a potential gap there, really that labor demand, but it also fit their mission. And also there was, as it turned out, huge student demand. Another example was I saw an institution that was located in what I'll call rural America, kind of out far and away from a lot of other things, ranches, farms. They implemented a ranch management program, and wow, it again took off. And once again, filling a gap. As Tammy mentioned, renewable energy. I worked with another institution that was located near some wind farms, and they decided that they really could put into place like a wind service technical program for people to work on these wind farms. Great enrollment, great community support, and all those students who graduated had jobs the moment that they graduated. And then finally, I worked with an institution located on the coast near a major port. And over the years, they had a couple of, I'll call it marine and maritime programs. And I watched them increase those programs over the years. And again, student enrollment was strong. Labor market demand for those programs was strong, and student demand was strong. And it was really embracing kind of all of these examples, some industries in their local area, looking out into the future, saying what are the possibilities, engaging the university community, and then really filling that gap. So my question to you is not only what are your program gaps, are you taking advantage of your geography and labor markets in your area? So Tammy, just a few stories there.
That's so great. Thank you, Scott. Great examples. We are on to our third polling question now. Danielle, over to you.
Thank you, Tammy. Polling question number 3. My institution uses market data to evaluate potential program growth or expansion opportunities. A, true. B, false. C, sometimes. D, I don't know.
And I think Scott provided a lot of really great examples of institutions that really have used market data at large, as well as just local economy data to really understand how their programs were fitting into their larger community. And those were really well received and resulted in strong enrollment, really strong and successful programs, as well as programs that are able to be financially sustainable over time, which is, of course, a really key element in evaluating your entire program portfolio. You can certainly have, loss leaders, what I refer to as the Costco rotisserie chicken, where it's $5, but it's at the end of the store and you're unlikely to get out of Costco with just that chicken. But you have these loss leaders that can be really impactful to your mission, to your reputation, but then being able to also have these programs that do have a little bit more of a financial return to be able to help make sure that your institution is in a financially sound position based on those enrollment trends. Okay. And
as a quick reminder, if you'd like to receive CPE credit for today's webcast, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. And here's the results.
Fascinating. So we've got about 30% that certainly does use market data to evaluate these opportunities, which is great. Only 2% said no, and then sort of a smattering of folks that are in between. And hopefully some of the data sources that Scott and I have talked about today can be potentially useful for you if you are interested in using this market data to help evaluate your programs. Okay, so I'm going to keep us walking through the evaluation process. So again, at this point, you've defined those metrics, you've done that program assessment, and at this point, you have compiled a significant amount of data, and it's really start to prioritizing and categorizing your programs. So here we've provided some sample categories that you could use to place each program into based on the results of your analysis. So first we have Explore. So these are new programs or maybe an iteration of an existing program that has that trifecta. So we've got emerging market demand, we've got student demand, and we have mission fit. And these are the programs where you can develop recommendations around how to further explore these options. So thinking through different ideas around what would this program look like? How would it fit within our portfolio? What college would it be in? How would it impact our accreditation? How would we staff and support this program's success? What are the resources that would be required to really explore this program idea? And when could we theoretically expect a return on that investment given some of the market trends and information that's available? So in this explore phase, you're really diagnosing the different factors that could help a potential new program develop, and also just trying to understand if there is a cost benefit in really pursuing that additional program. The next category that you could put programs in is Grow. So these are existing programs at your institution where you have a high level of market and student demand, you've got enrollment growth, you have a strong financial position to be able to operate that program, and you have it fitting very nicely into your mission, your vision, and your goals. So these are programs that really demonstrate a strong alignment with your strategic goals, and they might just need some recommendations on how to grow and expand their reach or their number of students. So those recommendations could include things like additional investment to allow for more student admissions. Maybe we need some more focused or targeted student marketing and recruitment, communication campaigns to really celebrate a lot of successes within this program. Or maybe this is a time for us to stop and see if we might need changes to our accreditation so that we're even able to accommodate program growth. And I know I've got a couple of clients that are in that position where they've got really strong enrollment, they've got really strong financial performance, their student outcomes are just phenomenal, and they are just sort of, they've got these enrollment limits due to their accreditation. So maybe taking a look at how you might be able to expand that enrollment as well. The next category that we'll talk about today is maintain. So these are programs where we have at least steady demand by the market, by students, some steady historical enrollment, and really an okay financial position. So the programs in this category, they're not increasing, but they're also not necessarily decreasing. So they're just sort of doing their thing, they're operating, things are going well. So for those programs, it can be beneficial to see what are their current practices. Are there any ways that they could potentially modify or enhance those practices to help that program just operate strong? So just making sure that that's in place. The last category that you could place a program in is review. And these are programs where you might have lower yield rates, you might have some enrollment decline, maybe market and student demand is sort of declining, and maybe there's also a financial burden for that institution to operate the program. Or even a question around mission alignment, which hopefully you haven't put a program into place where you have a question around mission alignment, but that does sometimes crop up. These are the programs that will really benefit from thoughtful recommendations and action plans. So for these programs, you could think about whether they need additional investment. So for example, if they have low enrollment forecasts, but they show a lot of promise with student outcomes, would some additional investment be able to help that program achieve its enrollment goals? Could the program be consolidated to conserve operational resources? So does this need to be a standalone program? Could we feasibly combine this with another similar program that's maybe a little more general, a little less niche, and also have some shared resources so that we're still able to really offer that program? It's just in a very different format where it's maybe a little bit more general and less focused. There's also a question for these programs on whether restructuring would help. So there are a lot of programs out there now that are offering courses online. Would that make sense for your institution? A lot of programs will have, an executive type program where students are able to work full time and go to school in the evenings. Is that something that might make sense for this market? So really just looking to see in this review category, what are the data showing us to indicate if there are different ways we could offer or deliver these programs to make it be a little bit more successful? And then of course, the last option for these review programs is of course program discontinuation, which we'll talk about in a bit. So really in this assessment stage, you're taking all of your academic program results, you're categorizing the programs, and you're helping develop recommendations to support your institution's mission through these different programs. All right, so the last step in the process after you have done all of this great work, your steering committee has issued its recommendations, it's communicated those out, it is time to implement changes and of course continuously monitor your progress. So we recommend developing an implementation plan to really show when the recommended changes are anticipated to take effect. That really helps support accountability across the institution. And then it also allows there to be some monitoring of whether the recommendations that were created result in measurable improvements in program quality and strategic alignment as they were intended. We often find dashboards to be a really great way to track implementation and performance progress in real time, because we want to make sure that leaders are having access to real-time information and can continue to iterate on these improvements. As you might know from personal experience, but certainly you can appreciate from today's presentation, this is a fairly complex and time-consuming process. And so it's also important to make sure that we have regular updates that are being made to institutional leadership to really show what's happened, what impact these changes have had on programs, and overall our institutional mission, vision, and goals. So we'll often see annual summaries that are put together to help leadership understand these factors and work with program leaders to facilitate ongoing decision making. So you certainly do not want to necessarily do this process every single year in its entirety, but making sure that you're following up in a regular and timely way can help reduce the overall burden of this type of analysis in the future. Now we're going to talk about program consolidation or discontinuations. I'm going to have Scott start us out here.
All right, so for program consolidation, really, you need to have 3 steps as outlined on this slide. There's the planning, action, and then the evaluation. So planning, really articulate the goals of the consolidation. What are you planning to achieve by consolidation? Develop detailed teach-out plans. How are you going to run this out into the consolidation? That communication with stakeholders is really critical, and then analyze financial implications of the decisions. And there are financial implications whether you are consolidating or discontinuing. And we'll get to discontinuing in a moment. So that's the planning side. Action side, you're going to have to reallocate some resources and then integrate that curriculum. How do you do that? You actually have to sit down and map out a plan. Transition faculty and staff, as probably you would expect. And then and really this last bullet point on action is key. Ensure compliance with accreditation and regulatory requirements. Then you evaluate. What's the impact on student enrollment, program quality? What's the financial impact to this? And then maintain thorough documentation of what you're doing from planning to action to evaluation. And consolidating low-performing programs, really, it can be a challenging process that requires careful planning, it requires careful communication, and careful collaboration. The ultimate goal when you're consolidating is to strengthen the institution's academic portfolio and really improve resource allocation. Consolidation, so if we think consolidation can be challenging, discontinuation, that can be downright difficult. Discontinuation, I don't see it very often, and in all honesty, it probably needs to happen out in the higher ed community more than it currently is. There's so many different things to factor into discontinuation. I'm going to talk about 2. Faculty. That's a really big one that has to be thought through carefully. And then what to do with the students that are currently enrolled. So there's really 2 main, I'll call it approaches when we're talking about discontinuation. The first I'll call long-term, kind of a slow burn. You plan an end date, you graduate the students that are currently enrolled through that end date. Maybe it's 2 years out, maybe it's 3 years out. The challenges there really are on the faculty side. How do you maintain those faculty to teach those programs when they know there's an end date? That can be really challenging, and I think that brings a fair amount of risk. But it should be something that should be considered. The other approach is more of a short-term, more of a kind of rip the Band-Aid off type approach. This can be expensive with this approach. You are often buying out contracts, and you are really scrambling to find other programs at other institutions you can assist your current students to transfer to. I mentioned at the start of our webcast today that I worked with one institution years ago that really that was able to discontinue programs within a 12-month period. And they really, that institution was constantly reevaluating its program offerings and looking at the ones they need to reinvest in. And it seemed like every year there was a program that they were discontinuing. And they did it in a very short period of time. It cost them money. They understood this. They were very fair to the faculty. They worked very hard, extremely hard, to find other institutions that their students could transfer to. And they worked hard to get those students transferred in as a beneficial of a way for those students as possible. They were really above board when they did all of this. And it wasn't easy, but for them, they decided that it was the right move, not only just to discontinue the program, but to do it quickly and to just to provide a quick cutoff. So really, program consolidation and discontinuation, it's something that every institution needs to look at. Most institutions probably need to embrace one or the other of these. These are not easy decisions. Sometimes they're not popular decisions. They come with headache, heartache, and sometimes some financial costs. But it is really critical for evaluating your portfolio and maintaining a strong portfolio that helps the institution move forward into the future. Tammy, anything else you wanted to add on this before we head to our next slide?
No, I think in the interest of time, we should close it out.
We are right there. So results. When we look back and we think about strategic program allocation and reallocation, we need to look at the resources that we have to invest in strategic initiatives. We need to assess low-performing programs. Those strong performing programs, not only we need to invest in, but we need to keep reinvesting in those strong programs, keep them best in class. Really explore the opportunity for new programs, that gap analysis that Tammy went through a few slides ago. What would that look like at your institution? Faculty development, student support services are both key. And then consider at the end of all of this, are there programs that need consolidation or discontinuation? With that, I think we move into our last polling question. Danielle?
Thank you, Scott. Last polling question for the day. My institution would benefit from a review from its academic portfolio to A, consolidate or discontinue programs, B, identify new programs, C, increase enrollment, D, promote financial sustainability, E, all of the above, F, none of the above. For those of you that would like a copy of today's slides, you can download them from the folder that says slide deck and handout. We will also be sending them out via email tomorrow, along with a recording of the webcast. Once you've completed all your CPE requirements, you will be able to download a PDF of your certificate from the CPE progress window. I'll go ahead and keep the slides up just for a few more seconds here. Get some last responses and the results.
Thank you, everyone. This was really great. We're happy that you were able to join and to share, and I'll have Danielle actually close out the presentation.
Thank you, Tammy and Scott, for a great presentation today. To our audience, if you have any further questions or comments, please reach out to us as we would be happy to continue the conversation. You can drop a note in the Q&A window or reach out to Scott or Tammy directly. Their contact information is in your console. If you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks if you have any difficulty downloading it now. Finally, here's a link to the survey for today's presentation. Your feedback is appreciated so we can make the most of your time with us. Thank you again for joining us. Take care, everyone.